Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. When you love the theme parks and attractions industry as much as I do, it's always a really sad day when we lose theme parks, rides, roller coasters, but especially when it's a historical attraction. And sadly today we have had news from Dreamland Margate here in the UK about the oldest roller coaster here in the country. Unfortunately, the park have confirmed that the Scenic Railway will no longer be an operational roller coaster and will be retired. In this video I'm going to talk about all the latest news, what the park have said, and also as well just look back on the history of this iconic ride here in the UK, because it's certainly got a fascinating history, this coaster. It was actually built back in 1920, so it's a very old ride, over 100 years old. Now, as much as most of the structure was completely rebuilt and replaced in a later refurbishment, it's still a very historic attraction. The fact that you know, this is a grade 2 star listed ride here in the UK. There's actually only 3 other rides in the UK that have got a listed status of grade 2, but this was the only grade 2 star listed ride here in the country. And you know what, it does make me really sad that this attraction is no longer going to be operational. Let me just go straight in with what basically the park have said here. In a statement, they've said that the ride is no longer viable to be operated as a ride anymore. This is after an incident that took place back in the summer of 2024 that I'll come on to a little bit later in the video. Since then, the ride has remained standing but not operational, which was throughout 2025. We didn't operate last year at all, and we're all kind of thinking, you know, is it going to be back this year? Are they going to have sorted out the issues? But clearly the decision has been made based on that to close this attraction and no longer operate it as a roller coaster. I'd imagine they've had the HSE involved with this. Along with that as well, the rising costs of everything at the moment is probably all a factor into why we're not going to be ever riding the Scenic Railway again at Dreamland Margate. Now, it opened in 1920, and what made this ride really special was the fact it has got an onboard brakeman. Now, there's not many Scenic Railway coasters around the world, a very limited number. There's less than 10, and the fact we're losing one more here is very sad. And with this, the onboard brakeman literally controls the speed of the train as it's going around the track. You can see the brakeman sat there on the train, and I always found that a real fascinating and also fun, quirky feature as well. I don't think a lot of people realised at the time, you know, in this more modern day and age, that they were actually controlling the speed. I remember chatting with some people in the queue and they thought that they were on there just for show, you know, but generally they were there actually controlling the speed of this coaster. We have got another Scenic Railway in the UK, which thankfully is very well looked after and will still be remain operational for a long time, hopefully, and that is at Great Yarmouth Pleasure Beach. They really pride themselves on that ride. They look after it very much. So as much as we're losing this, which is very, very sad, and also the oldest ride in the UK, the oldest coaster that we've got, at least there is still an opportunity to ride a very similar attraction here in the UK at Great Yarmouth Pleasure Beach. They take really good care in that attraction. They always have done. It's actually been having a lot of repaint work done again over winter, which is really positive to see. Now, with this ride, it did have quite a basic layout, but you've got to think it's a much older attraction. It's over 100 years old, this ride, and when they actually did a full refurbishment on it, they restored it back to how it was, with it being that listed attraction, and that's what really made it for me. You really did feel like you were riding a piece of not just UK theme park history, but roller coaster history in general, with it being such an old attraction. Now, the ride was actually granted grade 2 listed status in 2002, so it wasn't, you know, until quite a more recent history, you know, at least this side of the millennium, that the ride was actually granted that grade 2 listed status, making it the first roller coaster to actually be given any form of protection against demolition. So that's what I find quite fascinating with this ride. The fact it has been protected does mean this can't be demolished, and I'll come more onto what I think they're going to do in the future later on in the video. Now, Dreamland as a park have been operating for many, many years, but unfortunately it did actually close back in 2003. However, the Scenic Railway did remain operational for a few more years until 2006, so that basically operated as a standalone attraction. A big reason for people to come to Margate, especially for us, you know, we make sure we travel down there yeah, to go and ride it, you know, because it was a brilliant attraction, a historic ride, and you know me, I love my older historic attractions, I always have done, so losing this is a very sad sad news today, it really is. So it remained operating for a few years, and then unfortunately there was a targeted arson attack in 2008, and a significant portion of the ride was damaged, and it remained kind of just sat like this for a very long time. I remember seeing lots of photos of this ride when it looked in a terrible state. Obviously the park had long closed, but the ride was kind of still standing, and there wasn't really much else, you know, around to see, you know, in that area. It was just all kind of boarded off, and it looked like, you know, it was done forever. But obviously, as it was a listed structure, something needed to be done, and thankfully the ride was actually fully restored, with most sections actually rebuilt from the ground up, and it reopened in 2015 with a reimagined Dreamland as well. Now, honestly, when that park reopened in 2015, there was a lot of buzz, because not only had they fully rebuilt, you know, restored the classic Scenic Railway, they brought in a lot of flat rides and other attractions and really made it a fantastic seaside amusement park again. We really enjoyed it there. You can look back at the vlogs on the channel and see how good it was. They did a brilliant Halloween event called Screamland that year, and they brought in a new spinning coaster, they brought in a couple of flat rides as well. A number of new rides were purchased to kind of revitalise, reimagine the park, and I thought back then, the only way is up. Like, yes, they'd spent a lot of money, not just on the Scenic Railway, but on the rest of the park, but the only way is up, you know, for Dreamland. That's what we certainly thought, but already within a couple of years, some of them newer rides started to be removed, and now basically there's not much there. Quite a few travelling rides have come and gone over the past few years, and there's still, you know, other rides operational there at the moment, but this was the main draw for the park itself. Now, this is a really interesting one. When it reopened in 2015, they built a big stage and also made it a concert venue. And that is something that has gained popularity so much over the past past decade, really, throughout the park's history. They've started to hold a lot of concerts there, a lot of big events, and that is great to see, because as much as, you know, for me, it was more about the park itself. If that kept the park going and kept the Scenic Railway going, you know, I was more than happy, because we were seeing these events which were generating income, put straight back into the park, and keeping a historic ride in operation as well. And also we went to a couple of these events and they were really good. The stage located right at the front of the Scenic, the railway just behind it, which was fantastic. It really looked the part, especially at night as well. But especially back in 2015, you had the drop tower in operation there. There was the spinning coaster, the air race that they had, the pendulum ride that's now in Great Yarmouth. They had so many great attractions, and it really did feel like the only way is up. And yeah, it started to kind of decline, unfortunately, a few years after that, taking out quite a few different rides, travelling attractions coming in, and it was a bit of a downward decline for the park from that point. But still, the Scenic Railway continued to operate, and that was the main draw. As much as a lot of what else made Dreamland special had gone again in such a short period of time, they did keep looking after that ride and kept it operational until August 2024, where unfortunately there was an incident on the ride. Luckily, no one was hurt. Everyone was safely evacuated, which is good. The ride did suffer a derailment where a train actually hit an object on the track, which did cause a lot of damage. It ripped up a lot of the wooden slats basically that make up the track and the structure of it all, which is really sad and caused quite a bit of damage. Like I say, everyone was safely evacuated, but then from that point on, the ride was SBNO, as we would call it, standing but not operational, which was sad. And we thought, oh, maybe it'll get fixed, you know, winter of 2024. Nothing happened. We went into last season 2025, hadn't been fixed, you know, nothing was really happening, and the ride remained closed throughout all of 2025. And when that starts happening, for me, that's when alarm bells start ringing and you start thinking, what's happening? What is the future of this ride? We'd started to hear from a couple of people that there was, you know, discussions going on behind the scenes about what to do with the ride, whether to close it, whether to refurbish it or not. And then clearly today, the 27th of January 2026, the park did confirm that the decision has been made to retire the ride, bring it to the end of its life. If that incident hadn't have happened in August 2024, I don't think I'd have been making this video. It all goes back to that day, unfortunately, and the HSE would have been involved in that, would have done lots of checks to see what needed to be done in the future. Obviously, any wooden roller coaster takes a lot more maintenance and also just general looking after and inspections restrictions than other rides do. Of course, all theme parks need to inspect their rides and roller coasters, but a steel coaster requires nowhere near as much as a wooden coaster, especially one of this age. As much as most of it was rebuilt in 2015, it still ran like old systems, and the way it was set up, that ride was a very old school coaster. So it's one of them. It took a long time to do checks, and basically it sounds like the park have said it's no longer viable to do that. I did see in a newspaper report today where the park did say that it would take an extra hours of checks now to do every day, which would mean that it's not viable. If that's the case, then I think that's a real shame, because there's a lot of parks out there in the UK, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, Great Yarmouth Pleasure Beach, just to name a couple, that have got all the historic rides, but then they'll do the checks that are required because they understand and realise that that is what makes the park. That is the old school charm, the older attractions. Preserving that history means that people are going to come for that. So if that is the reason why, then I do think it's really sad. Obviously, we don't know the exact ins and outs there of what the discussions were with the HSE and the park. But yeah, like if that is the case and they've said it's no longer viable because of them extra checks, I think that's sad, because that's your ride. That is what people come for. For us, it's a long way. It's over 4 hours down there. If the Scenic Railway's open, we'll make the trip every year. Now it'll be every few years, if ever, because there's hardly anything there. And that's, in my understanding, if the park survives, I really hope it does. We don't want to see any park close, but we've seen this sort of thing happen before. Not really with historic rides and parks closing, but we've seen like American Adventure. They took out rides. A couple of years later, the park closed when he took out major rides. The same happened at Camelot, where they ended up closing after making lots of bad decisions and changes. And we've seen it go on and on over the years. Pleasureland in Southport, I know it did reopen, but yeah, like that happened in the past. So yeah, like this for me is like it's a downward spiral from this point, unless they can pull it together with new things. But that's if they want to have new things there, because clearly their focus has changed as a park. It's, in my opinion, from what I can see, they're not really that interested in operating it as a park. They want it to be a concert and events venue, which is fair enough. That was bringing the people in. But what I do think is sad is they've made that decision to close the Scenic Railway as well, especially because technically, I know it's an old ride, but all of it was refurbished. It had new trains and everything. Only 10 years ago, it seems like a complete waste, in my opinion, to have that ride standing there not operating. But still, that's the decision that's been made, and sadly, we're never going to get to ride it again. The Scenic Railway, I can't believe it, over 100 years of theme park history just closed like that. The good thing is, the positive thing is that it can't just be demolished, because it is grade 2 star listed. And the park have been very vocal on social media today by saying that they want to showcase its history. This summer there's going to be a pop-up exhibition about the Scenic Railway, so that sounds interesting. And I like the fact they're doing that. It was a big draw to the area. It really was, and a big part of our history in the UK. And they've got a long-term plan to reinvent the ride to showcase its history. Now, they haven't really gone into detail with this. In fact, they've basically said that they want people's ideas. So my idea for this Dreamland is, what I'd like to see them do is convert maybe the station or the old maintenance bay into a full museum about the history of it. You could have all old pictures, of course, the trains on display, everything like that. And then, if possible, actually have it where you could walk the track, or at least walk a good portion of the layout. With it being an older Scenic Railway, it's not like the drops are ridiculously steep. They're pretty small drops and turns. How cool would it be if you could walk around part of the track, part of the layout? Obviously, that might, involve putting in extra railings and that sort of thing, which would require permission because it's grade 2 star listed. But yeah, if that meant keeping it in use in some form, then that would be great. However, I do think it's a sad one. I think it's a bad decision by the park. I really do, especially because, I could understand even more if it hadn't have had any work done to it over the years, as in, a full refurbishment. The fact that it's only like 10 years ago that was done, it just seems like a real shame. And could this be the beginning of the end for another of our UK theme parks? I really hope not, but I guess we'll see what happens. But there we go. I am disappointed with this news. I am disappointed in the park for making this decision. But there we go. I guess it's just a sign of the times at the moment. Times are tough for a lot of these theme parks. You've really got to get out there and support them, especially here in the UK, where it just feels like the UK industry's on a balance at the moment with a lot of parks. It's really sad. It's a real interesting time. So we'll see what happens in the future. But of course, I wish Dreamland the best of luck with the park in the future. hopefully we see them invest in the actual park to put new things in and not just the concert venue. But yeah, I think it's clear where their vision is for the future. And sadly, we're not going to be seeing this historic UK ride part of it, even though it had a multi-million-pound refurbishment only a decade ago. Let me know your thoughts down below in the video comments. As always, I'd love to know what you think. And thanks for joining us for another video here on the channel. Lots more coming up, lots more sit-down videos, and then a couple of weeks we're getting back out into the parks, lots of vlogs coming up, some February half-term events, and then yeah, into next month where we're back into the main season again. And you know what? Looking at that dreary weather outside, I can't wait for it to just brighten up and get back into the parks. Thanks for joining me, and that leaves me with one final thing to say. Get out there and keep on riding. See you in the next video.